The massive space station hung in the void like a metal flower, its gleaming arms reaching out toward the stars. This was Council Station Omega, the most important place in known space. Here, the Galactic Council made decisions that affected trillions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Today, the station buzzed with nervous energy. Something was wrong. Very wrong. In the central conference room, beings from dozens of different worlds sat around a circular table. Their faces showed worry, fear, and anger. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. But they all shared the same concerned expression. Council Secretary Krath stood at the head of the table. His blue skin shimmered under the lights as he spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. "Friends, we face our greatest crisis in 300 years. The hegemony of Zeth and the Silicon Collective are ready for war." A murmur went through the room. War meant death for billions. It meant the end of peace that had lasted for centuries. Admiral Vexthara of the Zethian Empire slammed her clawed hand on the table. Her red eyes burned with anger. "Those machine lovers attacked our mining ships first. We demand justice." On the opposite side of the table, Nexus Prime 7 spoke through his mechanical voice box. His chrome body reflected the lights as he responded. "Your ships invaded our space. We defended our territory. This is your fault, flesh creature." Other council members tried to speak, but the two sides kept shouting at each other. Krath looked tired. This had been going on for weeks. "Enough!" Krath's voice boomed through the room. "We must find a solution. Previous security teams have failed. The Eldorian guards were too violent. The peaceful monks of Tyr were too passive. The mercenary guild demanded too much money." Dr. Yithril, the small, gray-skinned expert on alien minds, raised a thin hand. "What about the new members? The humans?" The room fell silent. Many beings had heard of humans, but few had met them. They were the newest members of the council, having joined just 5 years ago. Most aliens thought humans were unremarkable. They had no special technology, no psychic powers, and no natural weapons like claws or fangs. Admiral Vexthara laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the room. "Those primitive mammals? They barely have space travel. What can they possibly do that our advanced forces cannot?" Krath rubbed his forehead. The humans had sent a strange message when asked to help. They would provide diplomatic guards, that these guards would carry no weapons. No guns, no energy shields, no neural disruptors. Nothing. "It makes no sense," muttered Commander Dexal of the Hegemony Guard. "How can they protect anyone without weapons?" But Krath was desperate. Nothing else had worked. Maybe the humans had some secret they did not understand. Or maybe their peaceful nature would calm the angry delegates. Either way, they had nothing left to lose. "Very well," Krath announced. "The human diplomatic guards will arrive tomorrow. They will oversee the peace talks between the hegemony and the collective." Admiral Vexthara shook her head. "This is foolish. When those weak humans fail, do not blame me for the war that follows." The next day, a small human ship docked at the station. Krath waited in the docking bay with several other officials. They expected to see a large group of soldiers, or at least some impressive equipment. Instead, 6 humans walked off the ship. They wore simple blue uniforms with no armor or visible technology. They looked so ordinary that Krath felt his hopes sink. The leader stepped forward. She was a medium-sized female with dark hair tied back neatly. Her brown eyes looked calm and alert. "I am Guard Captain Sarah Chan. This is my team." She introduced the others. Guard Martinez was tall with kind eyes. Guard Williams was shorter but moved with quiet confidence. Guard Okafor had a gentle smile that somehow made Krath feel nervous. Guard Thompson looked like he could be anyone's neighbor. Guard Park seemed barely old enough to be away from home. "Where are your weapons?" asked Commander Thexall, looking confused. Captain Chen smiled. "We do not carry weapons, Commander. We find they get in the way of proper diplomatic protection." The aliens exchanged glances. This made no sense to any of them. How could these soft, weak creatures protect anything without weapons? Admiral Vexthara stepped closer to examine the humans. They did not seem afraid of her, even though she was twice their size with razor-sharp claws and fangs. "You realize we are dealing with the most dangerous situation in galactic history. Lives are at stake." "We understand," Captain Chen replied. Her voice was steady and calm. "That is why we are here." Krath sighed. He was making a terrible mistake, but it was too late to change course now. "Very well. The talks begin tomorrow morning. The Zethian and Silicon delegations will arrive tonight. Each side brings 30 delegates and 50 guards." Captain Chen nodded. "We will need the layout of the conference areas and information about all attendees." "Of course," Krath replied. At least the humans seemed to take their job seriously. As the group walked toward the main conference levels, Admiral Vexthara whispered to her aide, "Watch those humans carefully. When they fail tomorrow, I want a complete record for the council." But as they walked, something strange happened. Other beings in the corridors seemed to notice the humans more than usual. Guards who normally paid no attention to anyone found their eyes following the 6 figures in blue uniforms. Some felt uneasy without knowing why. Guard Martinez walked past a group of Aldorian soldiers. They were known for their fierce nature and combat skills. But as the human passed, they found themselves standing a little straighter, checking their weapons without thinking. Captain Chen paused to study a map of the station. Several aliens nearby felt an odd urge to look busy, as if someone important was watching them. But when they glanced back, they saw only an ordinary-looking human woman reading a simple display. By evening, word had spread through the station. The humans were here, and they carried no weapons. Most aliens found this amusing or puzzling. A few, however, felt something else. They felt like prey animals who had just caught the scent of a predator they could not see. The talks would begin tomorrow, and everyone waited to see what these strange, weaponless guards could possibly do to keep the peace. The morning of the first peace talks arrived with tension thick enough to cut. Council Station Omega had never hosted such a dangerous meeting. 2 civilizations that controlled vast armies sat across from each other, ready to discuss peace or declare war. The main conference room was enormous, with a circular table in the center that could seat over 100 beings. Advanced security systems monitored every breath, every heartbeat, every micro-movement. Armed guards from both sides lined the walls like metal statues. The Zethian delegation arrived first. Admiral Vexthara led 30 military officers and diplomats, followed by 50 elite soldiers in powered armor. Their weapons hummed with energy, and their red eyes scanned for threats. They moved like a military unit, precise and deadly. Minutes later, the Silicon Collective delegation entered. Nexus Prime 7 guided 30 advanced androids and digital consciousness cores, backed by 50 combat units with built-in weapon systems. They moved with mechanical perfection, calculating every angle and distance. Between these 2 armed forces stood 6 humans in simple blue uniforms. Captain Chen positioned her team around the room with quiet efficiency. She did not bark orders or make grand gestures. She simply nodded to each guard, and they moved to their assigned spots. To most observers, it looked random and unimpressive. Guard Martinez took a position near the main entrance. Guard Williams stood close to the emergency exits. Guard Okafor placed herself where she could see both delegation leaders. Guard Thompson positioned himself near the recording equipment. Guard Park stood at the back of the room. Captain Chun remained mobile, moving slowly around the outer edge. Commander Rixel of the Zethian Guard looked at the human positions and snorted. Amateurs. They have no crossfire patterns, no defensive formations, no escape routes planned. But as the meeting began, something felt different in the room. The aliens could not explain what it was, but the atmosphere had changed. Some found themselves sitting straighter. Others checked their weapons for no reason. A few felt an odd urge to speak more quietly. Krath called the meeting to order. We gathered today to prevent a war that would destroy billions of lives. I asked both sides to speak with wisdom and restraint. Admiral Vexthara stood first, her massive frame casting shadows. The Silicon Collective attacked our peaceful mining operation. They destroyed 3 ships and killed 200 beings. We demand compensation and a formal apology. Nexus Prime 7 responded with mechanical precision. Their ships invaded our territory without permission. We defended our space according to galactic law. We demand they remove all vessels from our borders immediately. The arguments continued, growing louder with each exchange. Soon, delegates from both sides were standing and pointing fingers. Voices rose to shouts. The armed guards on both sides tensed, hands moving closer to weapons dot in this chaos. The human guards did something unexpected. They did nothing. Guard Martinez remained perfectly still by the entrance, but somehow his presence made everyone who looked that way think twice about leaving. Guard Williams stood relaxed by the emergency exit, yet beings near him felt no desire to rush toward safety. Guard Okafor watched the room with calm eyes, and delegates found themselves glancing at her before speaking. Captain Chen walked slowly around the room's edge. She never stopped, never hurried, never looked directly at anyone. But as she passed behind each delegate, they seemed to remember their manners. Shouts became firm statements. Pointing fingers became raised hands. Commander Rixel noticed this first. "What are those humans doing?" he whispered to his second. "Nothing, sir," came the reply. "They are just standing there." "Then, why does this room feel different?" The commander watched more carefully. The humans never touched their belts or reached for anything that might be a weapon. They never made threatening gestures or moved aggressively. Yet somehow, their presence filled the room like smoke. 30 minutes into the talks, a Zethian military attach decided to test these strange guards. Colonel Mordek was known for his size and strength, even among his warrior people. He stood and began walking toward the refreshment station, deliberately choosing a path that would take him directly through Guard Martinez. Colonel Mordek expected the small human to step aside or try to stop him. Instead, Guard Martinez simply shifted his weight slightly and turned his body a few degrees. The movement was so subtle that most beings missed it entirely, but as Colonel Mordek approached, something made him hesitate. The human was not blocking his path, but somehow the space around Martinez felt occupied, claimed. The colonel found himself adjusting his route slightly to the left, then a bit more, until he was walking around the human instead of through him. Colonel Mordek reached the refreshments feeling confused and angry. He had intended to challenge the guard, but somehow he had ended up avoiding him instead. Worse, he could not explain why. Similar scenes played out around the room. Delegates who started to stand in anger found themselves sitting back down. Guards who began to reach for weapons discovered their hands had stopped moving. No one could point to anything the humans had done, but everyone felt their influence. Dr. Yithro, watching from the observation deck, made notes on his datapad. As an expert on alien psychology, he was trained to notice subtle behaviors. But the humans confused him. They were clearly doing something, but he could not identify what. "They are not using pheromones," he muttered to himself. "No psychic projections. No technological devices. How are they controlling the room?" The answer came to him slowly as he watched Guard Park. The young human woman stood at the back of the room, barely moving. but every few minutes she would shift her position slightly. Each movement was tiny, meaningless by itself. But together, they created a pattern that drew the eye and focused attention. Guard Park was herding the room's emotional energy like a shepherd, guiding sheep as the morning session continued. The shouting stopped. Delegates still disagreed, but they spoke with more control. Guards on both sides remained alert, but stopped treating each other as immediate threats. The deadly tension that had filled the room began to ease. Krath noticed the change and felt confused relief. He had expected the first day to end in violence or walkouts. Instead, both sides were actually talking to each other. During the lunch break, Admiral Vexthara approached Captain Chun. "What did you do in there, human?" Captain Chun looked up from her notes. "We maintain security, Admiral." "As requested. But how?" "You carry no weapons, use no technology, project no force fields. How do you control a room full of armed soldiers without any tools?" Captain Chun smiled, but the expression did not reach her eyes. "Who says we have no tools, Admiral?" The Zethian leader felt a chill run down her spine. For just a moment, looking into those calm brown eyes, she felt like a small creature being studied by something vast and intelligent. "What tools?" Admiral Vexthara demanded. "Experience," Captain Chen replied simply. "We have been dealing with dangerous beings for a very long time." As the afternoon session began, word spread through the station. The humans were doing something impossible. They were keeping the peace without any visible means of doing so. Security forces from dozens of species gathered in the observation areas to watch. What they saw made them deeply uncomfortable. 6 ordinary-looking humans were somehow controlling the most volatile political situation in galactic history, and none of the watchers could understand how they were doing it. The humans just stood there, calm and patient, while chaos swirled around them and somehow became order. 3 days had passed since the peace talks began. The impossible was happening. 2 civilizations that had been ready for war were actually discussing solutions. Not friendly solutions, but real ones. Both sides made demands, but they listened to counteroffers. They argued, but they did not shoot. The alien security forces watched the humans with growing unease. The 6 guards continued their strange work, standing in seemingly random positions, moving slowly around the room, never touching weapons they did not carry. Yet somehow, their presence kept order. Dr. Yithril spent hours studying security recordings, trying to understand the human methods. "They are predicting behavior," he told Krath during a private meeting. "Somehow, they know what each delegate will do before they do it." "Impossible," Krath replied. "Even our most advanced computers cannot predict individual actions with such accuracy." "The humans are not using computers," Dr. Yithril said quietly. "They are using something else. Something we do not understand." On the 4th day, everything changed. The morning session proceeded normally. Admiral Vexthara presented new mining rights proposals. Nexus Prime 7 offered counter-proposals for shared technology development. Smaller delegates from both sides added details and concerns. Captain Chun and her guards maintained their quiet watch at precisely 10:47 station time. Guard Williams suddenly straightened. He was standing near the emergency exit, 20 meters from the main table. Nothing visible had changed. No alarms sounded. No sensors detected threats. But something in his posture shifted from relaxed attention to sharp focus. Captain Chen noticed immediately. She began moving around the room's edge more quickly, her path bringing her closer to the main table. Guard Martinez stepped 2 paces closer to the entrance. Guard Okafor's gentle smile disappeared. The alien security forces saw these movements, but did not understand them. The humans had no communication devices, no hand signals, no obvious coordination method. Yet they were clearly responding to something. Alert status yellow, Commander Rixel whispered into his comm unit. Unknown threat detected by human guards. At 10:49, the lights flickered. Standard maintenance protocol. Happened 3 times every day. But Guard Park was already moving before the flicker began. At 10:50. 5 beings materialized in the conference room. They appeared suddenly, their cloaking technology failing as they activated weapons. Advanced cybernetic enhancements covered their bodies. Molecular cutting blades extended from their arms. Their faces showed the cold determination of fanatics willing to die for their cause. Silicon collective separatists. Extremists who wanted war, not peace. Death to the flesh compromisers. The lead assassin screamed as he lunged toward Admiral Vexthara. Chaos erupted instantly. Delegates dove for cover. Armed guards from both sides scrambled for their weapons, unsure whether to target the assassins or each other. Alarm klaxons began wailing. Security shields started dropping from the ceiling. In this madness, the human guards did something that defied all military logic. They moved toward the attackers. But they did not fight them. Guard Williams stepped directly into the path of the lead assassin, but instead of blocking or tackling, he simply shifted. The assassin's momentum carried him forward, but Williams was no longer there. The molecular blade cut through empty air while the assassin stumbled off balance. Guard Martinez appeared beside a second attacker. The assassin spun to face this new threat, raising his blade for a killing strike. But Martinez was already moving again, leading the assassin into a turn that brought him face to face with a third assassin. The 2 extremists collided with each other, their own blades tangling. They fought to separate, confused about who was enemy and who was ally in the sudden chaos. Guard Park found herself facing the smallest assassin, a female with neural interface spikes covering her skull. The assassin was faster than any unenhanced human should be able to track. Her blade moved like lightning, but somehow, Guard Park was never where the blade struck. She moved like water, flowing around the attacks, never meeting force with force. The assassin grew frustrated, striking faster and harder, putting more power into each blow. Each missed strike threw the assassin further off balance. Her enhanced reflexes, designed to make her unstoppable, became a weakness as she overcompensated for attacks that never connected. Within seconds, she was fighting shadows while wearing herself out. Captain Chun faced 2 assassins at once. They attacked from opposite sides, trying to trap her between their blades. She dropped to one knee as both weapons sliced through the air above her head. But she was not cowering. She was moving with purpose. Her movement caused both assassins to step forward to maintain their attack. This brought them closer together. They had to adjust their strikes to avoid hitting each other. The adjustment made them hesitate for just a moment. In that moment, Captain Chun stood up quickly. Her shoulder caught one assassin in the stomach, pushing him backward. He stumbled into his partner, and both killers crashed into the conference table. The alien security forces watched in stunned silence. The fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. All 5 assassins were down, tangled together, struggling with their own weapons and each other. Not one human guard had thrown a punch or drawn a weapon. How? Commander Risso whispered. Dr. Yithrol, watching from the observation deck, felt his blood run cold as understanding dawned. They did not defeat the attackers, he said slowly. They defeated the attackers' minds. The human guards had not fought 5 separate enemies. They had turned the assassins into a single confused organism that fought itself. Each guard had manipulated their opponent's natural reactions, using the assassin's own speed and strength against them. Guard Williams had made the lead. Assassin miss his target and lose balance. Guard Martinez had caused 2 assassins to collide. Guard Park had exhausted her opponent by making every enhanced reflex work against itself. Captain Chen had positioned 2 attackers so they interfered with each other. The aliens had been watching a demonstration of warfare they had never imagined. Combat without violence. Victory through psychology. Weapons turned into weaknesses. As station security moved in to arrest the stunned assassins, Admiral Vexthara approached Captain Chen. The massive Zethian warrior looked shaken. "What are you?" she asked quietly. Captain Chen straightened her uniform and checked her team. All 6 guards were unharmed. "We are diplomatic protection specialists, Admiral. This is what we do. But how did you know they were coming? How did you move like that? How did you turn trained killers into fumbling children?" Captain Chen looked directly into the Admiral's burning red eyes. "Experience, Admiral. We've been fighting wars longer than most species have existed. We have learned things that others have not." "What things?" "We learned that the deadliest weapon is not the sword or the gun," Captain Chen said softly. "It is understanding how your enemy thinks. And humans have been fighting other thinking beings for thousands of years." Commander Rixel stepped closer, his own weapons still drawn. "You made them fight each other without touching them. That should be impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Guard Martinez said, speaking for the first time since the attack. "You just have to understand the right pressure points." "Pressure points?" the commander asked. "Not physical ones," Guard Williams added. "Mental ones. Every thinking being has patterns, habits, automatic responses. If you know how to read them, you can predict them. If you can predict them, you can use them." Dr. Yithril rushed down from the observation deck, his data pad shaking in his small hands. "You were watching them before they appeared. You knew they were coming. How?" Guard Okafor smiled her gentle smile, but now it looked different to the aliens. It looked like the expression of something that saw prey approaching from far away. "People who plan to kill always change their behavior," she said kindly. "They move differently, think differently, feel differently. Station workers walked past our position 17 times this morning. 16 walked normally. One was thinking about death. You could tell that from watching him walk?" Krath asked, arriving with more security forces. "Humans can tell many things from watching," Guard Park said quietly. "We have been watching each other for a very long time. We got good at it." The conference room fell silent, except for the moans of the captured assassins. Delegates from both sides stared at the 6 humans with new understanding. These were not primitive mammals playing at security. These were apex predators who had spent millennia learning to hunt the most dangerous prey in the universe, other intelligent beings, and they had been restraining themselves the entire time. Security Chief Mordek could not sleep. 3 nights had passed since the assassination attempt, and the images would not leave his mind. 5 trained killers reduced to confused children by 6 unarmed humans. It was impossible. It was terrifying. It was necessary to understand. He sat in his private office, surrounded by data screens and classified files. Authorization codes flashed across his desk as he accessed the most restricted databases in galactic space. Military records, psychological profiles, evolutionary studies. Everything the Galactic Council had gathered about humanity in 5 years of contact. What he found made his blood run cold. Dr. Yithril entered the office at 0300 station time, looking as sleepless as the security chief. "You called for urgent consultation?" "Read this," Mordek said, turning his largest screen toward the alien psychologist. "Human military history. The last 1,000 years." Dr. Yithril scanned the data, his small eyes growing wider with each entry. "This cannot be accurate. It says they fought 347 major wars in the last millennium. That is impossible for a single world species." "Keep reading," Mordek said grimly. "They fought each other?" Dr. Yithral's voice rose in disbelief. The same species killing their own kind in organized campaigns? For resources? For ideas? For territory on a single planet? It gets worse, the security chief replied. He brought up another file. Look at their tactical development. Study their methods. The psychologist read in growing horror. Psychological warfare. Propaganda campaigns. Infiltration tactics. Assassination strategies. Torture techniques. His voice dropped to a whisper. They turned war into a science. Mordick nodded. Every other species we know fought wars for survival or resources. Simple conflicts with simple solutions. Humans fought wars to break their enemies' minds. They studied how thinking beings behave under pressure, then used that knowledge as a weapon. Dr. Yithral's datapad slipped from his shaking hands. The humans in the conference room. They were not guards. They were weapons specialists. Worse than that, Mordick said, calling up more files. Look at their evolutionary history. The screen filled with biological data about human development. Dr. Yithral read with growing unease. Humans had evolved as persistence hunters, capable of tracking prey for days without stopping. Their brains were optimized for social cooperation, but also for detecting lies, reading emotions, and predicting behavior. They hunted in groups, Dr. Yithral read aloud. Used tools and strategy to kill creatures much larger and stronger than themselves. Developed communication systems specifically for coordinating attacks on intelligent prey. Keep reading, Mordick urged. They developed empathy not for kindness, but for manipulation? Dr. Yithral's voice cracked. Understanding how others think was a hunting skill? Mordick brought up the most classified file of all. This is from our deep space reconnaissance teams. They have been observing human space for the last 2 years without human knowledge. The screen showed recorded conversations, intercepted communications, and behavioral studies of humans in their natural environment. What they revealed was a species that remained dangerously adapted for warfare, even in peaceful times. Human children played games that taught tactical thinking. Human entertainment featured complex stories about psychological manipulation and strategic deception. Human education included studies of history, psychology, and social dynamics that would be classified as military intelligence by any other species. They are teaching their young to be warriors, Dr. Yithral whispered. All of them. Every human child learns to understand and manipulate other minds. And they call it normal education, Mordick replied. They do not even realize how dangerous their knowledge is. Dr. Yithral accessed another section of the files. What is this? Diplomatic training for humans joining Galactic Council? Mordick's expression grew even more grim. Read it carefully. The file contained training materials given to humans before they interacted with other species. Most of it seemed routine. Language protocols, cultural sensitivities, basic etiquette. But hidden within the diplomatic guidance were instructions that chilled both aliens to the bone. Suppress natural behavioral reading instincts when interacting with non-humans, Dr. Yithral read slowly. Avoid using psychological pressure techniques in casual conversation. Do not analyze alien behavior patterns automatically. Restrain protective reflexes that may seem threatening to other species. They have to be taught not to manipulate us, Mordick said quietly. It is so natural to them that they do it without thinking. The psychologist brought up the next section. Training scenarios for diplomatic guards. Do not use intimidation stares. Do not position yourself to control room dynamics. Do not analyze escape routes and defensive positions automatically. Do not. His voice trailed off as the list continued for several pages. Every instruction was telling humans to suppress abilities they considered normal. They were holding back, Dr. Yithral said in amazement. In the conference room, with the assassins, they were still holding back. Mordek activated a new file. This is the worst part. Medical data from their space colonies. The screen showed psychological evaluation reports for humans living in deep space stations. The data revealed stress responses, behavioral patterns, and adaptation strategies that painted a terrifying picture. Humans isolated from their own kind for extended periods developed what their doctors called hunting instincts. They became hyper-aware of their environment, analyzing every sound and movement for potential threats. They began reading the behavior of alien colleagues with uncomfortable accuracy. They started positioning themselves strategically in every room they entered. The medical reports recommended that humans be rotated back to Earth regularly to prevent them from becoming too effective at predicting and controlling alien behavior. Too effective, Mordek repeated slowly. They have to send their people home before they become too good understanding us. Dr. Yithril was studying a final section of classified data. Security Chief, look at this. Population studies from human space. Mordek read over his shoulder. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had colonized 47 star systems in less than a century. Their population was growing rapidly, and their technology was advancing faster than any species in galactic history. How are they expanding so quickly? Mordek asked. Because they work together, Dr. Yithril replied, pointing to social cohesion measurements. Look at these cooperation indices. Humans coordinate large-scale projects better than any known species. They can make millions of individuals work toward a single goal without coercion. The same skills they use for warfare, Mordek realized. Group coordination, strategic planning, resource management. They turned their weapons into tools. Dr. Yithril pulled up one final report. This is from an economic analysis team. Human trade negotiations. The data showed something that explained why human space remained largely independent despite being new to galactic civilization. In every major trade agreement, humans had somehow negotiated terms that favored them. Not through threats or demands, but through perfect understanding of what their trading partners wanted and feared. They are manipulating the entire galactic economy, Mordek said slowly. And we are letting them because we do not realize they are doing it. The two aliens sat in silence, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's true nature. They were not the peaceful, primitive species they pretended to be. They were apex predators who had evolved to hunt and kill other intelligent beings. They had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare against their own kind, developing psychological weapons that other species could not even recognize. And now they were loose in galactic space, quietly taking positions in trade, diplomacy, and security. Positions that would give them access to the behavioral patterns and weaknesses of every known species. What do we do? Dr. Yithril asked quietly. Mordek looked at the screens showing human expansion, human diplomatic success, and human integration into galactic society. I do not know, he said honestly. They have not technically violated any laws or treaties. They are just better at everything than we expected. Should we warn the Council? Warn them of what? That humans are too good at keeping the peace? That they stopped an assassination attempt without violence? That they are successful traders and diplomats? Dr. Yithril understood the problem. Humanity's greatest weapon was that they did not seem dangerous. They appeared helpful, peaceful, and cooperative. By the time anyone realized what they truly were, it would be too late. The peace talks resume tomorrow, Mordek said finally. Watch the humans carefully. Try to see what they are really doing. As both aliens left the office, neither noticed a small device attached to the ventilation grate above Security Chief Mordek's desk. It had been there for 3 days, placed by maintenance worker Thompson during a routine air filter inspection. Guard Thompson received the full recording of their conversation through an encrypted channel that the station's monitoring systems could not detect. He listened to it once, then deleted all traces. The humans had always known that someone would eventually figure out what they really were. They had been preparing for this conversation since the day they arrived. The final day of peace talks arrived with an electric tension that filled every corridor of Council Station, Omega. Word had spread among the security forces about the investigation into human capabilities. Whispered conversations in a dozen languages shared the same theme. The humans were more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Admiral Vexthara stood in her private quarters, staring out at the stars. Her military mind had been working through the implications for days. If the humans were truly as capable as the evidence suggested, then every assumption about galactic power was wrong. She made a decision that would change everything. During the morning break in negotiations, Admiral Vexthara approached Captain Chun with her entire personal guard. 20 of the Zethian Empire's finest warriors formed a semicircle around the human guards. Each soldier was twice the size of any human, armed with energy weapons and protected by combat armor. "Captain Chun," the Admiral said in a voice that carried across the conference room, "I wish to speak with you about your methods." Every being in the room stopped talking. Delegates from both sides turned to watch. This had the feeling of a confrontation that could ignite the very war they were trying to prevent. "Captain," Chun looked up from her notes with calm eyes. "Of course, Admiral. What would you like to know?" "I want to know what you really are," Admiral Vexthara said bluntly. "We have learned things about your species that concern us greatly. You are not the peaceful guards you claim to be." The other human guards shifted positions slightly. To most observers, they simply moved to better see the conversation. But anyone who understood tactical positioning would recognize that 6 humans had just taken control of every sightline, escape route, and defensive position in the room. They did it so smoothly that most beings did not notice until it was already complete. "We are exactly what we claim to be," Captain Chun replied calmly. "Diplomatic protection specialists." Admiral Vexthara stepped closer, her red eyes burning with challenge. "We know about your wars. We know about your hunting methods. We know you evolved to kill other intelligent beings." A murmur of shock went through the alien delegates. Many had not heard these revelations. The peace talks forgotten. Everyone focused on this confrontation between the massive alien warrior and the small human woman. "Yes," Captain Chun said simply. "We did." The honest admission sent another wave of shock through the room. Most species would deny such accusations, try to explain them away, or claim they had evolved beyond their primitive nature. "You admit it?" Admiral Vexthara demanded. "Why would we lie?" Guard Martinez asked, speaking from his position near the entrance. "You asked what we are. We are human. Humans evolved as persistence hunters who specialized in tracking and killing other intelligent creatures." Dr. Yithril, watching from the observation deck with Security Chief Mordek, felt his breathing quicken. The humans were not denying anything. They were embracing it. "Then you are a threat to galactic peace," Admiral Vexthara declared. "You manipulate other beings through psychological warfare. You cannot be trusted in positions of security." Captain Chen smiled, and for the first time since their arrival, the expression looked genuinely predatory. "Admiral, you are making a serious mistake." "What mistake?" the Zethian warrior demanded. "You are challenging us," Guard Williams said quietly from across the room. "And we never lose challenges." Admiral Vexthara laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the conference chamber. "You think 6 unarmed humans can threaten 20 Zethian warriors? You are delusional." "We do not think anything, Admiral," Captain Chun said, her voice remaining perfectly calm. We know exactly what will happen if you continue this confrontation. Then enlighten me, Admiral Vexthara snarled. Her hand moving toward her weapon. Captain Chen looked directly into the alien's burning eyes. If you draw that weapon, you will lose. If you order your soldiers to attack, they will lose. If you try to use your size and strength against us, you will lose. You will lose because you are thinking like a Zethian warrior, and we have been studying Zethian warriors for 3 days. Impossible, Commander Rixel said from behind his admiral. We are the finest soldiers in the galaxy. You are excellent soldiers, Guard Okafor agreed with her gentle smile. But soldiers fight enemies. We fight minds. And Zethian minds follow very predictable patterns. Admiral Vexthara's eyes narrowed dangerously. Prove it. The challenge hung in the air like a poison cloud. Every being in the room understood that this moment would determine not just the success of the peace talks, but the balance of power in the galaxy. Captain Chen nodded slowly. Very well. Commander Rixel, you are going to draw your weapon in exactly 4 seconds, because your admiral's honor has been questioned and Zethian military doctrine requires you to support her. I am not. Commander Rixel began, then stopped as his hand moved automatically toward his weapon. He forced it to stop, staring at the human in shock. Soldier Kavash, Guard Park said from the back of the room, her young voice carrying clearly. You are going to step to your left in 2 seconds because you are trained to create a crossfire pattern. And your automatic tactical assessment is telling you to take the flanking position. Soldier Kavash froze as his left foot began to move without his conscious command. Admiral Vexthara. Captain Chen said softly, you are going to try to intimidate me by moving closer. Because Zethian psychology equates physical dominance with mental dominance. But you will stop exactly 2 meters away because your subconscious recognizes that I am not afraid, which means I am dangerous. Admiral Vexthara took a step forward, then another, then stopped exactly 2 meters from the human captain. Her face showed pure shock. How? She whispered. Because we have been watching you for 3 days, Guard Thompson said from his position near the recording equipment. Every move you make, every expression you show, every decision you consider follows patterns we learned to read 100,000 years ago. The conference room fell completely silent. Even the mechanical delegates of the Silicon Collective had stopped their constant humming to listen. You see, Captain Chen continued, other species evolved to fight for resources or territory. You developed weapons and tactics for those kinds of conflicts. But humans evolved to fight other humans. We spent millennia learning to predict, manipulate, and defeat creatures exactly as intelligent as ourselves. That is why you carry no weapons, Dr. Yithrao said from the observation deck, his voice carried by the room's communication system. You do not need them. Weapons are tools for applying force, Guard Martinez explained. But force isn't efficient. Why break something when you can make it work for you? Admiral Vexthara looked around at her soldiers, seeing them with new understanding. They were all frozen in partial movements, their tactical training fighting against their conscious minds. The humans had predicted their responses so accurately that knowing what they would do prevented them from doing it. The assassins, she said slowly. You did the same thing to them. We turned their enhancements into weaknesses, Captain Chen confirmed. Their speed became clumsiness. Their coordination became confusion. Their training became their defeat. Commander Rixel found his voice. But why? If you can do this to us, why serve as guards? Why help us make peace instead of conquering us? The question hung in the air as every alien in the room waited for the answer that would determine their future. Captain Chen looked around the room, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of millennia. Because we already tried conquering, she said quietly. We spent thousands of years conquering each other. We built empires, waged wars, and turned our home world into a battlefield. We learned that conquest is empty. Victory over broken enemies brings no joy. Guard Williams continued the explanation. We discovered something your species have not yet learned. The greatest victory is not defeating your enemies. It is making them into allies. You could rule the galaxy, Admiral Vexthara said, her voice filled with awe and fear. Rule? Guard Park laughed, the sound somehow more frightening than any threat. Rule is what you do when you cannot inspire cooperation. We do not want to rule you. We want you to succeed. Why? Nexus Prime 7 asked, speaking for the first time since the confrontation began. Captain Chen smiled, and this time the expression was genuinely warm. Because a galaxy full of successful civilizations is more interesting than a galaxy full of conquered slaves. We spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves and learned that peace creates more possibilities than war. But you could force us to do what you want. Admiral Vexthara insisted. We could, Captain Chen agreed. But forced cooperation is inefficient. Willing cooperation is much more powerful. So we help you find solutions that benefit everyone. The Admiral looked at her soldiers, still caught between their instincts and their awareness of being predicted. How do we know you will not change your minds? How do we know you will not decide to conquer us someday? Captain Chen's expression became very serious. Admiral, we are not holding back our dangerous nature. This is our dangerous nature. We have evolved beyond simple conquest. We learned to turn enemies into allies, competitors into partners, and conflicts into opportunities. She gestured to the conference table where the peace agreements lay waiting to be signed.